everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for this video, I'm going to be talking you through some of the books that I wish I could read again for the first time. You know those books where just reading it for the first time was such an enjoyable experience, and I feel like with every book that I read, I'm trying to recapture that feeling. So I got thinking about some of the books that when I was reading it for the first time, I was just like, I don't want this ever to end. This is what reading is all about. So I've got 6 books here that I want to talk to you about that hopefully give you some recommendations of some amazing books that I just so enjoyed reading and wish I could read again for the first time to capture that feeling that is so special. So this is in no particular order. So the first book is The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Murakami. And this was my first ever magical realism read. And when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I just absolutely fell in love with magical realism after reading this book. I really enjoyed reading his other books, but none has quite captured that same magic as when I read this. I feel like I've not picked up a Murakami book in so long, and even talking about this book is making me want to read another Murakami again. So maybe I'll have to try another one, because I've only read Killing Commendatore, Norwegian Wood, and this book, I think. So if you have any recommendations of a Murakami book that you absolutely love, do let me know, because I definitely need to read another one soon. But yeah, absolutely love this book. Like, reading it for the first time was just the most enjoyable experience ever. So yeah, off to a very strong start there. And then the second book I want to talk about is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And I read this one fairly recently. And the reason I loved reading this one so much is because for so long, my boyfriend was like, you need to read this book. You will love this book. And for some reason, I just didn't think I would enjoy it. So I always kept putting it off and putting it off. But then when I read it, it was just the most enjoyable experience. And it was that realization that actually, yeah, my boyfriend was right. And it was really nice to talk to him about it whilst I was reading it for the first time. So that's why I picked this book. And also, I just loved the setting. They do sort of like a road trip around America, stopping off at these different sort of remote American places, and just the descriptions of it as well. I just loved reading about that so much. And also, throughout the book, I sort of didn't really know where it was going to go. I had no idea how it was going to end. So that mystery element just really added to the experience. And I just absolutely, considering how big it was, flew through it. And I am definitely going to be reading more from Neil Gaiman, because I just really, really enjoyed his writing so much. So yeah, American Gods, absolutely loved it. And I hope the rest of his books give that same sort of feeling that I got when I first read this book. So then the third book is a classic. It is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And I'm sure so many of you have read this book and also loved it. It is so popular. But this was my first delve into dark academia. And oh my goodness, I loved it. It was just such a cozy and special read. Like, I feel like everyone who likes reading needs to read this book. It's just a book lover's dream, set on a college campus. Like, what more could you want? It's so cozy, and obviously the mystery element. There is a murder. I think it says that on like the first page. And there's a group of these college students all studying Greek who are somehow involved in this murder. And when I was reading this book, I was so tense throughout. So I feel like that mystery element was so well done. And I just, yeah, absolutely loved this book. The reading experience was so enjoyable, and I was so glad that it lived up to the huge hype that it had. I'm also curious if the rest of Donna Tartt's books are any good. Do let me know if you read any more, because I am intrigued. I did really enjoy her writing. So do let me know if you like any of her other books, because this book was just so enjoyable. And I feel like I've read other dark academia books after this one, but nothing quite is the same as A Secret History for me. So yeah, love this book so much. Then the next book is such a personal one for me. It is Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fanny Flagg. And if you just want a feel-good book, I highly recommend this. So the reason I loved reading this so much is all throughout my childhood growing up, we'd go to the same place in Italy and there was one DVD there and it was Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. So throughout my holidays, I would watch this film multiple times. So it was ingrained in my memory growing up. So when I read this book for the first time, only a few years ago now, it was such a magical experience and brought me right back to those trips in Italy. It is such a feel-good book about love and friendship. It's about a middle-aged woman who befriends an old lady in an old person's home. And this old lady is telling her about the story of Whistle Stop Cafe and how it came to be. And this story is just such an inspiring one. It's such a feel-good one. There are some ups and downs in it. Some bad things do happen, but at the end, it is just a feel-good story. I feel like I especially loved it because of those memories growing up, but I also just feel like it's a really good book. So yeah, love this book. It was such a special experience reading it for the first time after so many years of watching it growing up. Then the next book that I just loved reading for the first time is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. And this was one of the first books that I just could not put down. Like, it was impossible for me to put this down. I was so gripped. I couldn't stop reading it. I was entranced by the landscape that they were describing. There is such a mystery element to this. You have no idea what's going on. For those who don't know, it's about a place called Area X where people cannot live. They send loads of groups of people in, like scientists and experts, to try and discover what happens. But something always goes wrong. People either go missing or come back from that area, just completely different people. And so it follows one expedition into this Area X. And it is just so good. It is a trilogy, so there's 3 books, but I just feel like this book is the winner. The other 2 did not hit the mark for me. I honestly would just recommend reading this one book. I thought it was the star of the show for sure. Honestly, if you want a book that's going to get you back into reading, and maybe you've been in a bit of a slump recently, then I highly recommend picking this book up because you will not be able to put it down. It is so intriguing, and yeah, I just loved reading about that landscape and all the different characters. I thought they were so strong. I loved reading this book for the first time so much. So yeah, highly recommend this book. Loved it. And then on to the final book. That is Cersei by Madeline Miller. And again, this is such a popular one, but this was my first delve into mythology books. And I feel like it's really kick-started a love for it. Since reading this book, I've read quite a few books about mythology and just loved them so much and also learned so much. I feel like growing up in school, mythology was never really something that we were taught. So it was not something that I knew a lot about at all. And I was honestly quite daunted to start reading these books, but they are done in such a digestible way that you learn so much, but you're also just so hooked with the story throughout. So you're sort of learning without realizing you're learning. And I feel like I've honestly learned so much about it, which has been really rewarding, and I cannot wait to read so many more. So yeah, this was the first mythology book that I read and I just absolutely loved it. About Cersei, I also love reading about the underdog too. I feel like Cersei is such an underdog. This book was beautiful and quiet. It is about how Cersei was banished to an island by herself, not allowed to see anyone. So it's a really quiet book and I just absolutely loved reading it so much. So if you're wanting to get into Greek mythology, I highly recommend this book. And I just found this book really special because it did kick off a love for reading about Greek mythology and Norse mythology too. So yeah, love this. I feel like all those books have such a special place in my heart and I remember them so vividly. I feel like with me, I read some books and then literally the week after, I'll be like, what was that book even about? I don't know about you, but I just forget books so easily, but all these ones are so vivid in my mind. Even though I've read some of them years ago at this point, they all still hold such a special place in my heart, and I think I'll remember them forever. So yeah, if you're after some book recommendations, I highly recommend all of them. I feel like my reading experience with them, reading them for the first time, was just so special, and really to me what reading is all about. So I hope if you read some of these books, that also captures that amazing feeling that you get when you're just reading a book that you absolutely love. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one.